It's been a more than challenging decade for Woods. The starting point, a bizarre crash outside his home in Orlando. A scandal surrounding his private life followed. That led to the end of his marriage to Elin Nordgren and the loss of several lucrative sponsorship deals. Struggling with multiple back operations, his golfing powers continued to fade, and at the end of last year his world ranking had slipped to 1,199. Many put Woods' improvement down to his swing, so debilitated by back pain and the spinal surgery that aimed to alleviate it. To mitigate the effect it has had, he's changed his stance, now wider, with the ball further forward, making the most of the upswing on his drive. The result? His off-the-tee speed increasing from an average 114 miles per hour last year to 120 on this season's tour, and this weekend hitting a high of 129 miles an hour. Like all
to export for months.
Other no-deal scenarios revealed that each airline could need individual permission to fly to Europe. British drivers could need local car insurance in each EU country they want to motor through. And cats, dogs and, for some reason, ferrets could have to wait 4 months before being permitted to travel to prove they are free of rabies. Of course, the government hopes none of this will happen.
It's not what we want, it's not what we expect.
In recent years, Debenhams regularly made annual profits of more than £100 million. But this year, after 3 profit warnings, it's forecast to make £33 million. Debenhams' share price has also been on the slide, from 110 pence a share in 2013 to less than 10 pence today.
His spinal injury is located in the middle of his back. Surgeons placed electrodes against his spinal cord below the level of the injury. Connected to a battery implanted in his abdomen, it stimulates the nerves supplying his leg muscles. The researchers claim this means lost signals can once again pass from his brain to his legs.
Back here now, and day centres are a vital service for the capital's older people, a place to meet, to socialise and to stop people from getting lonely. But figures obtained by ITV News have found almost 30% of them have closed in the last 5 years. This at a time when charities are warning with people living longer, the number of lonely people is set to soar. All this week, Chloe Keedy will report on the many faces of loneliness. This first report focuses on the loss of a lifeline for many.
Its location on the Thames estuary is a long way from the beluga's natural habitat. They're an Arctic and subarctic species, rarely straying further south than southern Greenland and Canada. Belugas spend the winter almost exclusively under the sea ice around the North Pole. Beluga whales are found in the Arctic Ocean's coastal waters, in summer heading to places like Canada's Hudson Bay to feed. This one is now more than 1,500 miles from its usual home further north, so how did it get here? It may have headed into the Thames estuary to feed, but it could also be sick and disorientated. For a social whale, this one has swum far from the pod and is unlikely to survive even if it does escape the warm, fresh water of the Thames.
30 years, lifespans have kept on rising, more slowly perhaps in recent times, but now they are stuck at 82 years on average for women and 79 for men. The figures, compiled by the Office for National Statistics, show in some parts of the country life expectancy has actually fallen.
From Russia's military intelligence. A new image published this evening. It's apparently taken from his passport in 2003. By 2009, he was using the alias Ruslan Bosharov. But according to the website Bellingcat, his real name is Anatoly Chapiga, a colonel in Russia's intelligence service, the GRU. He was awarded the highest state award, the Hero of the Russian Federation, in 2014, an honor that's usually presented by President Putin personally.
Six men were convicted in one of Britain's worst miscarriages of justice, but no one has been charged since the Birmingham Six were freed in 1991. 2 years ago, families persuaded a coroner to reopen inquests into the victims' deaths, but today the Court of Appeal ruled the issue of who was responsible should not be included.
This year, it's the 70th anniversary of Britain's leading crisp brand, but these people aren't posting greetings cards. They're sending back Walker's packets as a recycling protest, but it's proving a problem for the Royal Mail, not just the manufacturer. Walker's, owned by PepsiCo, has promised to make its packaging 100% recyclable, compostable or biodegradable by 2025. But it produces 10 million bags a day. By 2025, protesters say billions more will go to landfill. Over 300,000 people have signed an online petition demanding faster action from Walker's and other crisp firms.
Across Europe, the decline in weekly drinking amongst teenagers has been the greatest in England, down from nearly 50% in 2002 to less than 10% in 2014. Scotland follows closely behind, down 28%, and in Wales, where nearly 60% of teenagers had been drunk more than twice in their life back in 2002, that had almost halved by 2014.
Sir Alex Ferguson's case of illegally driving on a motorway hard shoulder was also thrown out because Freeman argued the Manchester United manager was ill and had no choice. Jimmy Carr's case of using his phone while driving was dropped after Freeman said using the dictation service on the phone to record a joke didn't affect his driving ability. And Freddie Flintoff won his case after Freeman successfully argued speeding documents were sent out 2 days later than they should have been. District Judge Barbara Barnes agreed, ruling, "What I find is the fact it did not arrive in the post room of Bentley Motors Limited until February the 7th, and therefore was 1 day outside the legal limit. The defendant in this case cannot be convicted."
Venezuela is on the northern coast of South America and has the largest oil reserves in the world. But oil production has collapsed and the country is in economic chaos, with hyperinflation seeing prices double every few days. Shortages of food and medicine have forced more than 2 million people to flee as murder and violent crimes spiral out of control. Our correspondent Dan Rivers travelled to Maracaibo, a port once at the very heart of a thriving oil industry, but now where people are struggling to survive.
Is having devastating effects. Under the leadership of Hugo Chavez, it was championed as a socialist paradise where the rewards of the oil industry were shared by the people. But as Chavez's health began to fail, so did the country's economy, increasingly so after his death in 2012 when current President Nicolas Maduro took over. With regular shortages of food in the shops and a rise in protests on the streets, the situation quickly deteriorated when the oil price fell in 2015 and a recession followed. And in recent months, hyperinflation has made the currency virtually worthless. Foreign journalists are rarely allowed into Venezuela to report, but Dan Rivers was able to travel to Maracaibo, the centre of the country's oil industry, to witness the plight of its people.
Despite being phased out, PCBs don't easily break down and remain in large quantities in the world's oceans. They found their way into marine plankton, then animals like shrimp, then fish, and on up to killer whales. At the top of the food chain, they receive the highest and most toxic doses. PCBs destroy their immune systems and, more critically, their fertility.
She had such a...
As for that other sea creature we've been keeping an eye on, well, on day 3 of Whale Watch, the beleaguered beluga is still roughly where we left it last night, in the Thames. The marine life experts say it does still look to be feeding. While it carries on doing so, they have no plans to move it.